technologic, 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 technologic. Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it, write it, get it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it, plug it, play it, burn it, rip it, drag it, drop it, zip and zip it, lock it, fill it, curl it, find it, view it, code it, jump and lock it, surf it, scroll it, pose it, click it, cross it, crack it, switch, update it, name it, read it, tune it, print it, scan it, send it, fax, rename it, touch it, bring it, pay it, watch it, turn it, leave it, stop, format it, write it, get it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it, plug it, play it, burn it, rip it, drag it, drop it, zip and zip it, lock it, fill it, curl it, find it, view it, code it, jump and lock it, surf it, scroll it, pose it, click it, cross it, crack it, switch, update it, name it, read it, tune it, print it, scan it, send it, fax, rename it, touch it, bring it, pay it, watch it, turn it, leave it, stop, format it, buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it, write it, get it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick rewrite it, plug it, play it, burn it, rip it, drag it, drop it, zip and zip it, technologic, technologic.
Before we analyzed our survey results, our group thought that the older and more educated a person, the higher the chances are that they read the paper. However, our survey results suggested otherwise. Our results showed that both non-bachelor's and bachelor's participants were not frequent readers of a newspaper. 69% of those without a college education did not read the newspaper often. In addition, 62% of those with a bachelor's read the newspaper 3 days a week or less. These results could be because of some people may only read sections of the paper that are interesting to them. The same results are shown with online newspapers. Based on interviews, our group went in with the hypothesis that people with and without degrees own a computer and get news online. Based on our survey analysis, it didn't really matter whether or not the person had a bachelor's degree. There was not a huge amount of respondents who frequently read an online newspaper. For those with a bachelor's, 38% were frequent online newspaper readers, and 24% of non-bachelors accessed online newspapers frequently a week. Our group went into this project with the same assumption of print magazine. Those with a higher education access print news more often. The survey results suggested that not many people in general, regardless of education level, use print magazines for news. Slightly more of the bachelor's respondents, 28%, read a print magazine more frequently than the 20% of the non-bachelors who read a print magazine 4 or more days a week.
Alright, enough with that newspaper stuff. I mean, isn't everything going online these days anyways? Let's talk computers. Our group's secondary report and interview summary left us with several conclusions and assumptions about the access to computer for news consumption between those with a bachelor's degree and those without. Now, we originally found that those with a bachelor's degree tend to use technology for more news consumption than those without. And in regard to using the internet for news consumption, overall, the majority of the bachelor's group showed high frequency, while for the non-bachelor's group, non-frequent use tended to be higher. Now, using your computer at work, results of our survey showed that 52% of the bachelor's group uses a computer at work frequently for news consumption, while only 38% of the non-bachelor's group does. Now, however, the type of work also determines whether or not one's able to use their computer there. Now, let's talk about using your computer at home. For the non-bachelor's group, it was pretty much half and half for frequent versus non-frequent use of a home computer for news consumption. It was also the same for the bachelor's group, but there was a little variation. 46% rarely use a computer at home for news, and 54% use it frequently. Now, this also somewhat correlated with our interview research. Now, one question on our survey asked how often people watch a news video online. Apparently, it is not too popular. Both the bachelor's and non-bachelor's groups showed that about 80% of each group rarely watch news videos online. When asked how frequently they use a computer for news consumption each week, the majority of both groups responded frequently, with bachelors at 90% and non-bachelors at 76%. Now, online news sites. 63% of the bachelor's group accesses online news sites, while only 45% of the non-bachelor's group does. And our interviews also backed this finding up. Now, to wrap things up, going along with our secondary research and our interviews, those with a bachelor's degree tend to use a computer more frequently than those without.
Before looking at the survey results, our group had made a hypothesis that people without a bachelor's degree watch more television, but people with a bachelor's degree watch television for news consumption. We found that for the most part, our hypothesis was correct. Overall, people with a bachelor's degree and without a bachelor's degree frequently watch TV. Results for people without a bachelor's degree showed that 14.29% have never watched television for news, but around 58% frequently watched it for news. For people with a bachelor's degree, 12.8% never watch television for news consumption, but around 51% frequently watch television for news. Most people without a bachelor's degree found local and national television news to be somewhat reliable, and most people with a bachelor's degree also found local and national television to be somewhat reliable. In the realm of technology, radio news is often overlooked, but our survey results help us understand our radio demographic. The survey results for a non-bachelor's degree show that 46.15% do not frequently listen to radio for news, and 53.85% frequently consume it for news. However, our results for people with a bachelor's degree showed that 39.31% do not frequently use radio as news, and 60.69% frequently use radio for news. In conclusion, our results show that overall, people without a degree watch more television and listen to less radio. In regards to news consumption, people without a degree also receive more news from television than radio.
Switching to the more social part of media, according to our secondary research, the average adult blogger is at least 37 years old and has some post-high school education. Many companies are writing blogs to attract clients or customers. However, people without bachelor's degrees are not reading blogs that frequently at 82%. For people with bachelor's degrees, they are consuming blogs at 90% every blue moon. That means that only 10% of people with college degrees almost on a day-to-day basis read blogs. According to my own interview, Travis, the video producer for RJI, job requires him to post videos to blogs. Otherwise, he really does not care to use social media unless it is his personal Facebook. Speaking of Facebook, 41% of people without a bachelor's degree read Facebook, Twitter, and MySpace less than 4 times a week. However, more people without a bachelor's degree are keeping up with their social networking more than 4 times a week at 59%. But 69% of people with bachelor's degrees read Facebook, Twitter, and MySpace. For people with bachelor's degrees, only 33% frequently socially network. Jordan's interview, David is one of those people who have a degree frequently using Facebook and Twitter. Therefore, our research, regardless of having a degree or not, people do use social media.
Last but not least, let's talk smartphones, iPads, Kindles, and such. In the beginning, our group hypothesized that people without bachelor's degrees would be pretty similar to those with degrees, at least in terms of access to the same types of phones. As it turns out, according to our individual interviews, people with bachelor's degrees tend to have more access than those without. All 5 of our subjects with bachelor's degrees or above had smartphones, and the lone Kindle owner was in this group too. Only 3 of our 5 non-bachelor's degree subjects had smartphones. Our survey followed this trend with 47% of bachelor's degree recipients frequently using smartphones. Our group without bachelor's degrees had only 31% frequent users. The groups are similar in their use of other technologies like iPads, Kindles, etc., with 80% of people in both sets never using them. Our second hypothesis in this category was that people without bachelor's degrees were less likely to use mobile devices, etc., in order to seek out news. This was supported by both our interviews and the survey, though not by as wide a margin as we had expected. According to the survey, 67% of people without a degree do not use cell phone to access news, and 21% do so frequently. In the group with degrees, 63% of people never use their phones to access news, and 24% did so frequently. Our interview results, the survey suggests that the bachelor degree group and non-bachelor degree group are more similar in their use of cell phones and news access than we thought. Only 3% more people in the degree group did so frequently.
Technologic, 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 technologic. Buy it, use it, break it, fix it, trash it, change it, mail, upgrade it, charge it, point it, zoom it, press it, snap it, work it, quick erase it, write it, get it, paste it, save it, load it, check it, quick
Hey Clyde, what about these Twitter ties?
Technologic.